When I was a little girl, I lived with a single mother who seemed to be at work constantly, and my younger brother. I was in middle school at the time, around 10 or 11 years old in 6th grade, while my brother went to an elementary school about an hour away. Every day when I got out of school, I would want to pick him up, then take us home where we would stay alone with all the doors locked until 9 p.m. when my mom came home. I did this every day for a long time. And I bring this up just so it's clear exactly how predictable my schedule was. Anyway, one day in spring I was coming home with my brother, and there was a small dog outside of our house with a leash thrown over one of the cacti outside the house. We were living in southern Colorado, just to be clear, so there were cacti all over the place. Anyway, being the responsible 11-year-old that I thought I was, I pulled the dog off the cacti and looked at his collar. Weirdly enough, there was only a phone number on its collar instead of a name, address, or tags that gave the thing's medical information. I didn't think anything of this, and I got our landline to call the number and let whoever lost their dog know he had been found. This is where things got weird. The phone didn't even finish the first ring before someone picked up the line, and a man said, "Hello, Zanya Fallon, what can I do for you?" Before I can get in a single word, I didn't know his voice, and our landline showed my mom's last name, which was different than mine. I just figured this had to be a friend of my mom, and I told him that I had found his dog. "Okay, sweetie, I'll be over there soon," he said, before I could even give him my address. And he was there really soon. I'm talking a matter of minutes before a beat-up green pickup pulled up in front of my house, and a white guy I've never seen hopped out. He looked like a cowboy from old silver screen movies, and that's when I knew that he wasn't someone my mom knew, though I still didn't really find anything had happened weird. He was just so charming, I felt like I could trust him. I handed him the dog's leash, and he said, "Thanks, Zanya. I'll be seeing you and Ezekiel again soon." And he pointedly looked at my brother Zeke's bedroom where he was sleeping. Then he got into his car and drove off. About a month later, when I was walking my brother home, I found the same dog, clearly starved to death with its body split open from the heart. It had been tied into the first cactus I had found it on, and from the smell and the blood, it was clear it hadn't been dead for anything more than a couple of hours. I threw it away before my brother could see it and got him to bed for his nap. I never saw the guy again, but even now that I live thousands of miles away from that city, I'm still paranoid that someday he'll find me again and do whatever he planned to do to me when I was 11.
It's been around 4 years since this happened, as I was in middle school at the time, but only very recently have I understood what has happened. As a middle schooler, I used to play tennis a lot. At my school, you were given the option to play tennis instead of normal PE. I was part of this tennis program since I was in elementary school, so I knew the coaches very well. Around my 7th grade year, they hired a new coach. He was a nice, older man named Ron. He was the coach of the section I would play, so for the entire year, we would have lessons every day. Now, I wasn't alone in these lessons, as I usually had 3 or 4 other kids with us. Ron was nice. He would let us do fun tennis minigames where he would incorporate Disney shows or cartoons into the mix. He seemed to know a lot about kids shows, but he never had any children as far as I know. He would also ask us if we saw the latest episode of Shake It Up, and he was serious when he asked. He would actually watch those shows and ask us about it eventually. I thought it was kind of funny at the time, but looking back at it now, it was just weird. So flash forward about a year, and summer is over, and I'm back to school. It's the first day of classes for my 8th grade year, and I go to tennis. Immediately, I am greeted by Ron and asks me about my summer. Nobody was around yet, and I was sort of uncomfortable being alone. He said to me, "You've grown quite tall this summer. You're getting big. I wonder what else of yours has grown and is big now." He had been eyeing me down while he said that, but at the end of the sentence, he focused his eyes on my crotch area. He kept staring at my crotch for a good 30 seconds, silent, until the main coach came over, patted him on the back, and told him to start the lesson. That day, nobody else was there for my section, so I was alone with Ron. He insisted on touching me and showing me how to handle the racket, even though I had been playing tennis for 4 years, so I knew how to properly swing, and he knew that too. He was also quite forceful, and I just remember being very uncomfortable. Luckily, more people came into my section as the year went on, and I was no longer alone with Ron. I eventually graduated middle school and went to high school on a different campus and never saw Ron again. I didn't realize what he meant when he asked what else had grown until about a few months ago when I thought about it again. It also turns out that only a few months into the next school year after I had graduated, they fired the coach for unknown reasons, but some parents were told that he was fired for turning out to be a pedophile. A friend of mine actually saw Ron a few weeks ago when he went into a taxi and he was their driver. Ron immediately recognized my friend, and my friend just got out of the taxi and left.
It was a hot night during the summer of 2015. Being the heavy pot smoker I was during the summer with my friends, I was smoking almost every night, and I couldn't exactly tell you whether or not I was high either during or before when this incident occurred, but I can almost assure I wasn't. Just thought I would add that in for some credibility. Whatever though, back to the story. It was a regular summer night. My time estimation is that it occurred somewhere between 1 and 4 in the morning. I was in my bed and I was asleep, or at least I think I was asleep. Let me explain. I'm not sure if anyone can relate to this experience, but the only way I can seem to explain it is my mind was conscious and my body was fully asleep. What I mean by this is my mind was active. I was aware of my surroundings in my room, but I couldn't move in the slightest. At the time, my room was in the upstairs attic. Now that I think of this, being that it was the attic, this might have some relevance to what happened. Only God knows what could have happened there through the years. I have no idea. The only real reason I was up there to begin with was because I wanted a little more privacy, and the room was completely isolated from the rest of my house. My actual room was smack right next to my parents', and it was very hard to have privacy in there, especially at night, being that there was not even a working door and I had to be very quiet and such when my parents were asleep. This really annoyed me. I wanted to be able to blast music, watch porn with audio or any videos, FaceTime my girlfriend, and just a lot of shit I couldn't do while being in a room next to my parents. Nonetheless, my sleeping parents, and usually being pretty high. My sister being away at college allowed me to take the attic bedroom, so I took that opportunity almost instantly. God, now I really wish I didn't. Also, I thought I should mention, while FaceTiming my girlfriend, which was almost a nightly thing, we'd always kid and joke about ghost stories and demons and stuff like that. Me usually being the one saying, "There's a demon in my room," and other stuff like that, followed by a silly, ghostly demon voice impression. It was all fun and games then, but little did I know, maybe there was some slivers of truth behind it. Back to the story. As I was saying before, I was lying in my bed conscious. However, I could not move my body at all, even though I tried to every effort. In other words, I guess you could say I was paralyzed. I was awake mentally, but my body was still asleep, and I realized this too while it was happening. It was very uncomfortable and uneasy feeling to experience. So as this was happening, I continued to try and move. I felt a sudden, very strange feeling. Just thinking about it gives me chills. The only way I could think of to put it is that there was a feeling of very intense pressure. And when I say intense, I mean intense. Like it flooded my whole body and my whole surrounding. Since my mind was active and I was experiencing this all firsthand, I immediately reacted to this pressure. It was a very uneasy feeling, and at least I could say it was uncomfortable and absolutely terrifying. In other words, it was just like pure darkness, or what I like to call it, pure evil. Just being able to move my eyes, since at the moment I still didn't have access to my body. I just saw intense darkness throughout the room. The feeling I was experiencing kept getting more intense and intense by the second. All I kept thinking in my head was, God help me, God help me, why can't I wake up, what the fuck is going on? The evil intensified even more, and I began to feel a lot of heat surge throughout my body. The feeling I was experiencing at that point was not only the most intense pressure I've ever felt, but mentally, it was truly the most terrifying thing I'd ever experienced. Then all of a sudden, I seemed to just gain access to my arms out of nowhere, and my immediate reaction was I clenched the crucifix I was wearing around my neck with all my strength, and I was praying to God in my head, begging for it all to stop. Now at this point, I came to the full conclusion something very dark and evil was not only very present and responsible for this event, but I believe I was trying to be possessed or something like that. Honestly, I have no idea. I remember saying something in my head like, "Bring it on, motherfucker," or something like that, as if I was speaking directly to whatever it was, and still clenching my cross and not letting it up one bit. I then began to feel pressure subside, and in a sense, the dark entity just leaving my body or surrounding, or whatever the fuck it was doing. All I know is, shortly after this, it was gone. And it was just like a snap of a finger. Everything was fine again. I got a sudden feeling of, I guess the only way to put it would be the sudden feeling of peace, like it was finally over. Then it was like another snap and I was fully conscious, laying upright upside my bed, and I was clenching my cross like I was during my dream, or whatever the fuck it was. I looked around the room and everything seemed normal and fine. I was sweating and all I had was an absolute imprint of remembrance to what I just had experienced. At that point is when I finally let go of my cross. After another few seconds of trying to put everything together, I just let out a big, "What the fuck just happened?" I didn't really know what to say or think. I shrugged it off and eventually I was able to fall back asleep. However, the next morning and the next 2 weeks, I was left in a very uncomfortable state, remembering what had happened that night. To this day, I still can't exactly tell you what I've been through, but I'm just really glad I had my cross on. I'm confident in saying God was looking out for me against whatever the fuck that was that night. Please don't forget there is an evil in this world.